You're the horizon, they're bright. The glimmer that breaks the constant night. You are the brilliance, the dream, evidence of things unseen. And even the darkest days are temporary. You are the everlasting light. All of the time and space could not contain. You are the everlasting light. You are the glory that stays. You never dim, you never fail. And you are the power, the truth. And nothing can stop you, and nothing can stop you. Even the darkest days are temporary. You are the everlasting light. All of the time and space could not contain. You are the everlasting light. Even the darkest days are temporary. You are the everlasting light. All of the time and space could not contain. You are the everlasting light.
The end and the beginning, the new reality. Outside my understanding, but still within my reach. As far as I can see you, you're closer still to me. You are the everlasting light. The end and the beginning, new reality. Outside my understanding, still within my reach. As far as I can see you, you're closer still to me. You are the everlasting light. Yeah.
these lungs to sing once again. I will praise Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. The silence there, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Oh, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. The silence there, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. Your name is light, and the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. The silence there, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Your name is light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is light that the shadows can't deny. Your name cannot be overcome. Your name is alive, forever lifted high. Your name cannot be overcome. Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus. The silence there, Jesus, Jesus. You make the darkness tremble, Jesus, Jesus.
Welcome, Mosaic. We're so excited to see you today. It's going to be an incredible weekend. My name is Beck, and this is my incredible husband.
That's right, incredible. She said that.
It's
My
true.
name is Joe, and I want to introduce you to our incredible daughter who is coming. She'll be here in less than 100 days. It is
That's
so
crazy.
exciting, right?
As our fourth, that's kind of crazy.
That is very crazy.
Mosaic, there are so many incredible things happening. And the biggest thing, the biggest news is that in 2 days, The Genius of Jesus, The Man Who Changed Everything book is coming out in 2 days. Are you ready? Make sure you pre-order your book by going to thegeniusofjesus.com. And as a church, we are going to put everything we have behind this because we know this book is going to change so many people's lives. Make sure you get a copy for yourself, for your mom, for your dad, for your friends. This is going to be a life-changing book and we cannot wait. Also, if you live in Southern California, we have a great opportunity for you. As Pastor Erwin is doing a book signing at the Barnes & Noble at 7 p.m. at the Grove. you can go to mosaic.org/book signing to RSVP to make sure that we have enough books for you. We cannot wait to see you there.
And for all of you that also live around the world, we have an amazing opportunity for you as well. Every time one of Pastor Erwin's books is released, we as a church get behind it and we have book clubs that are hosted all around the world. So wherever you are right now, you can host a book club, invite your friends, invite neighbors, and this is such a great way to take the content and the material of the book and to continue having conversations together. So if you're here and you want to be a host for one of our book clubs, you can go to mosaic.org/book club and you get all the information on how to host. You can sign up and let's get behind this Mosaic. It's so exciting that we're gonna, for the next few weeks together, have opportunities to dive into the message of this book. And then in connection with the book, Pastor Erwin has also released a new podcast called The Genius Of. And this is an amazing podcast where he has been inviting friends and business leaders to talk about their genius and how it can help unlock our own genius in our lives. And so if you're more of a podcast person and love having conversations like this that help you grow as a leader and as an individual, then I want to encourage you to check out the Genius Of podcast. Go and subscribe now, because every week there's new episodes that are released.
And now I'd like to talk to you about why we love to give. You see, we have 3 boys, and one of them is almost 2, and he's learning how to speak. And one of the things that I've been watching him, observing him as he's learning, is that he always just repeats the last couple of words. Now, he doesn't always understand what he's saying, he just repeats something until he gets it. And that's similar to tithing. Sometimes you don't actually understand the meaning of it or why it's so significant, why it's so important for you. But as you start the practice of tithing, I promise you that you will see so much life change inside of you as you start beginning to trust Jesus with your resources, with your money, with your life. And watch as that opens up something inside of your heart, inside of your soul, that literally changes you and changes the people around you. We are changed because of so many people who give above and beyond. And we're so grateful for you. Thank you for everything you do to making sure that Mosaic becomes the most incredibly generous community. You can give by going to mosaic.org/give, or you can give by going through the Mosaic app.
And I'm so excited because we are continuing our new series where we've been diving into conference talks over the last few years. And today, Pastor Erwin is going to bring an incredible message that he gave at one of our conferences. And I want to encourage you to lean in. I want to encourage you just to be ready and expectant for God to move in a profound way, because this series is going to be truly special. And so I can't wait to hear what God has to say.
So tonight we're wrapping up our theme, The Future Of. If you're a part of Mosaic, you know that that is our ongoing theme. We will always be talking about the future. But one of the great privileges we feel we have over these days is to introduce our broader tribe to a conversation that we have all the time. And so in these few moments that you've entrusted me with, that you've allowed me to have in your life, I want to talk to you about the future of the church. Now, there are some of you, you are not a part of the church, you don't go to church, you may not even like church. And if anything, this message is so much more for you. Because whatever you've experienced from the church or through the church or because of the church is the past of the church. It's not the future of the church. And the wonderful thing is that whether you love the church or are suspicious of the church or are wounded by the church, if you'll step into it, you have the opportunity to create what the church should have always been. It's interesting to me that right now there are almost 2 opposite conversations coming to the same conclusion. There are many, many people who do not believe in God and have given up on faith and have just said Jesus was a great teacher or an inspirational leader, but not who he claimed to be. And so there are many people outside of faith that would say the church is irrelevant. There's no place for the church in the future. But ironically, there are a lot of people who actually believe in God and believe in Jesus, and so many who grew up in church would say, been to church, I've done that, and I don't trust it, and I don't think there's a place for the church in the future. And so strangely enough, this is one thing that people who believe in God and don't believe in God agree on, that the church is irrelevant, that there's no place in the future for the church. If anything, we need to pull back and disconnect and find a way to live life in a little bit more of a protective isolation, because it's dangerous to be around humans. There may be no dangerous place in the world than inside of human community. And so we're sort of torn because we know that we're oftentimes not good for each other. We're not safe with each other. But at the same time, we desperately need each other. We desperately long for each other. And so what are we going to do? Because we human beings seem to long for most the thing we know how to do least. So why can't we just sort of disconnect ourselves and live our lives in a spiritual isolation so that we're not responsible for anyone else? Because a part of the problem with being in a community, of being in a tribe, of being identified with something that we might call the church is that now you're responsible for someone else's actions. Now you're responsible for someone else's choices, and they might actually taint your reputation. Of course, on the other end, you might be the problem. You might be the person who connects to that community, and you've ruined everyone else's reputation, and they want to disconnect from you, but they don't know how. Why in the world would God do this? If we could just for a moment suspend belief and believe that we're created by God, that we're created in his image and likeness, that we're created for relationship, not only to him, but to each other. And that the real texture of the miracle that Jesus brings to his death and resurrection is not simply to connect us to him, but to connect us once again to each other. Why would God insist on us doing life together? I mean, I know it. I've heard it. Me and God, we have our own relationship. We have our own understanding. I do better worshiping God alone in the woods, or worshiping God at the beach, or just worshiping God in nature. You ever felt that? You ever thought that? What you're really saying, it's a nice way of saying, I connect better with God as long as there are no humans in my life. But the moment I see one of you, I start losing sight of God. But the strange thing is that the scriptures tell us that humans are the ones that are created in the image of God, not trees. Trees are beautiful. I love trees. Hug a tree. The tree will appreciate it. But the problem is when you hug a tree, you don't get a lot of response. But the safe part is there's nothing dangerous in hugging a tree. The tree's just going to stay there. The tree will never betray you. The tree won't hug you for a moment and then stab you in the next moment. It's why it's easier to adopt a pet than to choose a human. Because you know at least you know your cat is indifferent to you. Come on. The human pretends to not be indifferent. It's almost like the human pretends it's a Labrador, loyal, faithful, and lovable, and then later becomes a wildcat, disconnected on its own and slightly dangerous if you get too close. It was several years ago. I think it was the last time we as a family went to El Salvador. We were able to take Kim and Aaron and Mariah, and we went down there, and I saw some of my family, and we went up to one of the volcanoes, and we had this rent-a-car, and we took it down a road we shouldn't have gone, and we burnt out the four-wheel drive or whatever that is, and on the way back, the engine was smoking, and the car just died. It just gave up its spirit. It said, I'm done. And it just dropped off. We pulled off to the side of the road, and we're there in the middle of El Salvador, outside of the city center, and what is known as the most dangerous street in the entire nation, which would make it one of the most dangerous streets in the world. And we're in the car, not sure what to do. We don't have anyone we can contact. I have an uncle who's with us, and and a truck pulls up in front of us, speeding up to us, pulls over as if they're in a panic. And this woman runs out and tells us all to get in the truck. And so my uncle runs. Was our aunt with us? Yeah, my aunt was with us, and she got in the truck. And then Kim got in the truck, and she took Mariah with her in the truck. Then my uncle, who's a coward, said, go, go, go. And they took off and left me and Aaron behind. I don't remember how old you were. You were young, maybe 10. And we're stuck, and night dropped. And we were in the most dangerous street in my nation and perhaps on the planet. And I had to explain to Aaron, I said, okay, there's a field over here. And if something happens, I need you to run in the field, and I just need you to hide. He goes, why, Dad? And I said, just trust me. And then all these men would come by with machetes. He said, Dad, why do all these men have machetes and weapons? I don't consider a machete a weapon. It's just a work tool. And he said, why do they have machetes? He said, they're coming home from work. A lot of men were coming home from work. And we waited hours until finally that truck came back and got us. And me and Aaron, we jumped into the back of the truck, and we were driving down this long road. They're flying down. And all of a sudden, in this pitch black night, there were no street lights, no artificial lights anywhere. It was a beautifully dark night. And we're looking up at the stars, and all of a sudden, there was a firefly. I don't know if you've ever seen a firefly, but if you see one, you probably don't even see it. One firefly will probably not capture your attention. But along with that one firefly, there were dozens upon dozens, and then hundreds upon hundreds. And then there was an ocean of fireflies flying over the truck as we were flying down the road. And it was as if we were having this out-of-body experience of the beauty that we were surrounded by. And I can tell you, being trapped and stuck on the side of the most dangerous streets in the world was completely worth the experience of watching the beauty that we experienced right over us. I think it's easy to overlook a firefly, but it's impossible when they come like an ocean of light, dancing in the darkness. It was just a couple of years ago, we decided to take, I don't know, maybe our first family vacation. It only took us 30 years, but we got there. And we wanted to go to Tulum. Well, we didn't want to go to Tulum. Our kids wanted to go to Tulum, so we went to Tulum, and we didn't really know where Tulum was. We didn't quite make it to Tulum, but we were somewhere between Cancun and Tulum. And there was ocean there, and there was a butterfly. It was orange, I think it was. Wasn't it orange, honey? You remember it? You don't remember the butterfly, do you? You don't remember the butterfly. You remember when there was this massive migration of hundreds and hundreds, if not thousands of butterflies that invaded the space we were in. And we asked the people who ran the place we're at, does this happen every year? And they said, this has never happened in our lifetime. We have never seen this migration of butterflies flow in. And it has never happened since. We were there watching these thousands of butterflies just dancing in wonder and beauty. They made the daylight so extraordinary. It almost took our breath away. It is to me fascinating that when you see one of even the most beautiful species in the world, you might be so busy or so distracted, you might not see it. But when they come in community, then you see the beauty of the one through the many. So in Ephesians chapter 3, this is what the scripture says about us. This is what the scriptures say about the future of the church and why the idea of the church was the idea that Jesus was willing to die for. Beginning of verse 10, it says, his intent was that now through the church. Now, when you hear the word church, please don't think of a building, because we, the human experiment, are the church. His intent was that now through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known to the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms, according to his eternal purpose that he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. In him and through faith in him, we may approach God with freedom and confidence. I think it's extraordinary that the scriptures are telling us that God has a language that sometimes we overlook. I want you to realize that God's in a conversation with you. You may not know that you're in a conversation with God, but I'm telling you, you are in a conversation with God. And one of the ways I know that you're in the conversation with God, even though you don't know you're in the conversation with God, is because I've been in a conversation with God even when I did not know I was in a conversation with God. Because sometimes God was talking to me, but I was talking to everybody else. Sometimes God was talking to me and I was just talking to myself. Sometimes God was talking to me and I was talking at God. But I want you to realize that God's not just talking to us. In fact, in some beautiful way, God speaks to all of creation. I mean, the entire story in the scriptures, God says, let there be light. God begins a conversation with light. And light says, here, ready to roll. God speaks to all creation. He spoke to the universe and it came into existence. And it says here that God is having a conversation, it says, with the rulers and authorities in the heavenly realms. In other words, God is speaking to eternity. But he's not speaking English. I know it's hard for some of you to believe. See, the language that God is using is not our language. The language of God is the church. He says his intent was that now, through the church, the manifold wisdom of God should be made known according to his eternal purpose that he accomplished in Christ Jesus our Lord. In other words, this is scripture as if there's all like this angelic community going, what are you doing, God? Because can you imagine any being looking at us going, that's a good idea? Listening to God talk about us, I just love them. Really? You just love them? I do, I just love them. I believe in them. You think so? Oh, I have a future and a hope for them. Really? I don't see a lot of future or hope for them. I mean, take a moment and look at us as a humanity. We stand in a moment right now where there's just so much destruction and pain and suffering and confusion. One person walks into a building in Thousand Oaks just a few miles from us and kills 12 people because of what's burning inside of his soul. Because there's so much anger and vitriol and violence inside of him that he had to somehow activate it in an act of hate. It's unimaginable violence. And then before the week was even over, our community goes up in flames. And people start losing their homes and their businesses and their futures. And I stand in this moment and I go, God, explain this. Help me make sense of the world we live in. And it just really frustrates me when people try to give such simplistic answers to all the pain in the world. Because I would like to have a long conversation with God about this, wouldn't you? But what's amazing to me is that what the scriptures are telling us in the middle of all the chaos, in the middle of all the pain, in the middle of all the tragedy, that God is using the church to express his wisdom. See, together we express God's wisdom. See, when people try to make sense of God, what are you doing in the world? See, it's hard when you're isolated and disconnected, even if you're the most awesome person in the world, by yourself, you do not express fully the language of God. Because people look at you and go, well, she's just awesome. That's just who Haven is. She's just incredible. She's just kind and she has integrity. That's who she is. And so it becomes Haven's story. And they might meet you and they go, oh, well, that's just who you are. That's who Christina is, because that's the way she lives her life. She's just a person of integrity. She's just solid. She's responsible. And what happens is when we live in isolation, even when we live at our best, everybody goes, that's just you. See, the language of God is when God moves us together and makes us a community. He makes us a tribe. He makes us the church. And suddenly, people can look at all of us, broken as we are, fragmented as we are, dysfunctional as we are. See, we become the miracle that humanity desperately needs. We become the story that God is writing in human history. And it's the way he explains to eternity, this is what I know that you don't know. This is what humans can look like. It says that God, through the church, reveals his manifold wisdom. That the wisdom of God cannot be understood unless people start walking together in community. It's when we learn how to forgive each other. It's when we learn how to love each other. It's when we learn how to pick each other up. It's when we learn to make our lives not just about ourselves, but make it about each other. See, it's when we decide that even if we're one glorious butterfly, we cannot compare to an ocean of butterflies traveling together. Even if you are an extraordinary light, you can't compare as one firefly to an ocean of fireflies lighting up the night. Because then you become glorious. You become undeniable. You become irresistible. We become extraordinary together. I like how I look when I'm with you. I like how you look when you walk with others. It doesn't make you less. It doesn't diminish you. It doesn't overshadow your beauty and your wonder and your uniqueness and your talents. See, when you walk in community, that's when people really begin to see the extraordinary nature of your uniqueness. So together we express God's wisdom, and that's why the church is so important, because people are trying to make sense of life, and giving meaningless, superficial, cliche-ish, standardized answers to the deep pain of the human dilemma is not good enough. We have to write the story by becoming a people. Because then when we become, we bring hope to the world. He goes on in verse 12, it says, in him, speaking of Jesus, in him and through faith in him, we may approach God with freedom and confidence. I love those words, freedom and confidence. I think every person who's walked on this platform has expressed how afraid they were. I don't know if you noticed, that's a theme. I don't ever want someone up here who doesn't struggle with being a little bit afraid. Because if you don't think the moment is bigger than you, then you think you're way too big. But I love the fact that every person, as insecure and uncertain and inadequate as they felt, they stepped into freedom and confidence. And that doesn't happen by accident. Have you ever noticed that when you cheer people on, they get better? Let me tell you, I have spoken in places that's nothing but hard work. I have spoken in places that have made me the worst communicator in the world. I'm holding them accountable. See, I love being in this community because there's so much faith in this room. And I don't want to over-spiritualize it. There's so much hope in this room. There's so much optimism in this room. Let me tell you what's in the room. See, even if you don't use language of the scriptures, let me tell you what's in the room. This is a room full of people who are for you. And I just hope that as we journey together and people step into our space and move with us and travel with us and journey with us and do life with us, they'll feel the wonder of that kind of hope. See, even if you don't believe in God, when people believe in you, it feels like it's God. Because the moment someone says you don't have to be who you are, you don't have to stay where you are, you don't have to be defined by the worst moments in your life. You are more than that. See, the moment someone speaks into your life and tells you you're not any more broken than we are, you didn't have any more struggles or pain, there is as much rubble on us as there has ever been on you. See, we're just here so that maybe you can see enough of us together to realize, oh, this can be you. You can find hope. You can find confidence. You can find freedom. He goes on to say, I ask you, therefore, do not be discouraged. Wow, people 2,000 years ago were discouraged. people who knew Jesus were discouraged. I don't know why, but that's encouraging. I'm encouraged that people who knew Jesus face to face were discouraged. I ask you, therefore, do not be discouraged because of my sufferings for you, which are for your glory. For this reason, I kneel before the Father, for whom every family in heaven and on earth derives its name. I pray that out of his glorious riches, he may strengthen you with power through his Spirit in your inner being, so that Christ may dwell in your hearts through faith. There's so much we're going to unwrap here, but I want to get to the next thought. It says, and I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, don't let that slip by. I pray that you, being rooted and established in love, may have power. See, we keep looking for the wrong source of power. But the only power that the scriptures ever tell us to aspire to is the power of love. It's hard to believe it's the most powerful force in the world, and so we keep turning to other means of power. That you may have power. Here it is, listen. Together with all the Lord's holy people. I know that's an overstatement, holy. But he's not calling us holy because we're perfect. He's not calling us holy because we're holy. He's calling us holy because now in relationship to Jesus who died for us, God does not see us through our imperfection, but he sees us through his perfection. I like that. I love that God sees me through the reflection of his son. And when we were little boys in El Salvador, my grandmother, she had a temper. And she'd get mad at us and she'd get a belt and she starts swinging. None of this sort of like highly developed, we're going to explain to you why we're going to beat you. Like with my kids, I would sit down with them and I would talk to them about what they did wrong and I would help them understand what they did. Then I would help them explain to me what they did. And I said, what do you think is the proper punishment? And my kids go, oh, this is more painful than anything you could do because you just punish us. But my grandma, she didn't do that. She just assumed we knew what we did. And she grabbed that belt and she started swinging at us. But we had an uncle named Richard, who was just a few years older than us, but he was old enough. He was about 10 years older than us. And the moment my grandma started swinging at us, Richard would just cover us up and he would take the beating. And you would think my grandmother would just pull back, but she wouldn't. She's like, okay, you want to take the beating for them? Here you go. Bam, bam, bam. I never once said to my uncle, don't do it. Get out of the way, save yourself. I was like, no te mueves, don't move. So when he calls us holy, he's saying, no, you're covered by Jesus. So God's never going to see you through your worst moment. God has a very different filter for you. He sees you through the best moments you've not even yet lived. But the part I want you to focus on, he says, together with. See, why does he have to add together with? Because he's about to make such an extraordinary promise that he kind of knows us. And he knows that we're going to listen to this promise and we're going to want to make it individualistic. I can receive the benefit of this promise without people in my life. See, I think the reason the scriptures really do not work for us is that we filter the Bible through a purely egocentric, narcissistic, self-oriented filter. And we think all these promises are about me, but they're about we. He says, together with all of the Lord's holy people to grasp, here it is. This is what happens when we come together to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And to know this love that surpasses knowledge, that you may be filled to the measure of the fullness of God. See, the future of the church is not simply that together we express God's wisdom. So the church is how God is writing in human history the story of us with him. So when we begin to live the story of us without him and life doesn't make any sense, God says, I'm writing my story. Look at the church because I'm going to show you what happens when you come together, because together we express God's wisdom. But also together we express God's fullness. I have so many people over the years who said, where do I go to be discipled? Where do I go to go deeper? I don't know where that phrase came from, but it's like, I want to go deeper. And in fact, one time I was a little irritated and someone said, where do I go deeper here at Mosaic? And I just said, well, what's the evil in your life that you're trying to get rid of? He goes, well, no, it's not that. I said, you see, because most of the time when we want to go deeper, what we're actually saying is, I want to go someplace where it's just me and God, and I don't have to be concerned about anyone else in the world. And from that place, all we send are our thoughts and prayers. He says, together with all of the Lord's holy people, it's then that we begin to grasp. See, I'm just beginning to grasp what love is. It's taken me a lifetime. Well, when I was young, I thought I knew what love was. Well, I thought I knew what love was when I was 10. Didn't you? Or you were 12. You remember those first loves? They were so intense, so deep. I gave him the best years of my life. You're 11. You haven't had the best years of your life. He said he'd always love me. It's so funny the way we talk about love. I'm amazed we're not all so jaded by the time we're 16. See, I think it's astonishing that people do not believe in God, but they still believe in love. I'm like, really? You can't believe in God, but you still believe in love? Let's check out the evidence. Show me anything God has done that you can prove God did to you that was negative. But now stop and reflect for a minute. Let's just write a short list of the people you've loved and have loved you. And let's start defining all the wounds in your soul. See, after all these centuries, we should have already given up on love. We still write songs about love. Most musicians can't even find love, but they're writing about love. In fact, would writers have anything to write about if they didn't hate somebody they used to love? I'm not just thinking about Taylor Swift or John Mayer. I'm thinking about Shakespeare. I'm thinking about Solomon. And you want to get jaded about love? Try it. And yet, we keep believing in love. There's something inside of us that keeps hoping against hope, that what we experienced in the past was not love. And the only way you can ever really know is when you find love and it heals you. And he says, I pray that you will be rooted and established in love. This is where we're going to live. And that you may have the power of love to grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And here's the curious thing. This promise is completely in the context of human community. You cannot know the power of love when you're alone. See, we humans are designed for a relationship. It's inescapable. And whether you choose to disconnect yourself and live in isolation, if you choose to never trust people with your heart again, if you choose to never trust God with your heart, see, whenever someone says to me, I just can't trust God, I know it's because I can't trust people. When a person says, I just cannot trust God with my life, it's because people have let them down. Because God keeps identifying himself with us even when we keep ruining his reputation. But together we can grasp how wide and long and high and deep is the love of Christ. And to know this love that surpasses knowledge. See, I want to love so profound, there are no words to express it. I want to experience love so deeply that language must be forsaken. That you may be filled with the measure of all the fullness of God. And yet, here's the promise. See, God wants you to experience him in his fullness. He doesn't want you to live with just enough life to survive or make it through the day. He wants you to live in the fullness of who he is. And while your intimate personal relationship with God is so critical and essential, I want you to know the fullness of God can only be fully experienced when we travel together, when we journey together, when we do life together in this community known as the church. Wow, what a ripoff. We can only experience God's fullness if we decide to love each other. What a bait and switch, all right? We thought all we had to do was love God. And Jesus says, what's the most important commandment, Jesus? To love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, mind, and strength. Don't you just wish he stopped there? But then he goes on. He can't even count. He said, this is the greatest command. 2. Jesus was great at philosophy, terrible at math. I'm going to give you the greatest command, love God and love your neighbor as yourself. It's almost as if he knew the same place from which we will love God is the same place from which we love people. It's almost as if we knew if we actually allow ourselves to be filled with the love of God, we cannot hold it. It cannot be contained, because when you are filled with the love of God, it is bigger than you. You begin to experience how deep and wide and long and high that love is. I remember when I heard this bacterial scientist. I'm sorry. I know I just go to these strange places, but it's odd because, like, Jerome, come here. Like human contact, we go, okay. Like, we've touched each other. We've connected. But if you're a bacterial scientist, you know that we're actually engaged right now. Because if you deal with percentages, we're not mammalian, we're bacterial. Because we actually have more bacteria than we have flesh and blood. And so we actually begin interacting. Our bacteria actually interconnects before we ever touch. Go home and sleep on that. Anybody have someone they love that's really far away? Someone you have to give a call, send a text, FaceTime? Isn't it odd? You can actually talk to someone on the other side of the world and you can feel the connection. See, when you have a conversation with someone you love, it doesn't matter if you're in Japan and they're in Berlin. As you're interacting with each other, when you see their face, when you make eye-to-eye contact through technology, because you're not actually talking face-to-face. You're talking phone to phone. You're looking at your phone romantically. You're looking at your phone with deep affection. You're in love with your phone. She's not there. She's somewhere else. And her image, no, her essence is being translated into energy inside of her phone, traveling invisibly through the atmosphere, and then it could have gotten lost somewhere. Yeah, how is that? How is it that she's talking to you and it doesn't go to someone else? Wouldn't it be crazy? She goes, I love you. It comes on your phone, and your wife's there. I don't know her. And yet somehow we have the technology because we're designed for connection. All technology in the end is our determination to connect. It's our battle against our own disconnection and loneliness. And somehow that technology, that magic, travels across the atmosphere, is retranslated into your device, and there's contact. And I know this because I've talked to Kim from around the world, and when she says, I love you, it is as palpable and real as when we're standing next to each other. In fact, sometimes it feels more real because the distance makes the intimacy more clear. He says it's when we travel together that we experience the fullness of God. I want you to know something. I'm completely aware of this. I can experience God in a unique way by myself. But the fullness of who God is cannot be self-contained. God is just too big to be fully expressed and experienced just in you, by yourself. But when we walk together, and you ever just sat with friends and laughed? And something happens. You can't even explain it. How do you explain it that everyone laughs at the same moment, at the same thing, and you have the same emotion in that same moment? And all of a sudden you're connected. You become one. It's more than metaphysical, it's a reality. And God says, I created you like this. And imagine what happens when you walk together and you call on me and I step into that moment and my presence becomes the presence that connects all of you together. See, I believe in the church and the future of the church because through the church, see, together we express God's fullness. And there are people everywhere trying to find God. And I know this. This is why I have so many friends who do not believe in God and they walk into Mosaic and they experience God. And it's not anything I've said. I'm just not that good. Some days I tell Kim, I think I could just read the back of a sugar package. Because the moment someone walks into the presence of God and they step into this ocean of fireflies and butterflies, they see the beauty and somehow it moves in them. I remember the journalist who became a close friend who was writing a story on religion and churches and she came into my office interviewing me, and she was an atheist. And as we were talking, she said, well, what's the role of a pastor? And I said, well, really, everyone has enough information. It's about interpreting all the information we have. She goes, that's where I feel like I am. I have all this information, and I don't know what to do with it. And I said, well, that's what I do. I'm really good at helping people figure out what to do with all the information. She goes, well, what do you think I should do? I said, I think this article isn't about Mosaic. I think this article is about you. See, I think God is searching for you. And he has you searching in this journalistic endeavor so you can find him. So I think you should just give your life to Jesus. And that journalist looked at me so incredulously. She said, who do you think you are to ask me to violate my journalistic integrity and become personally involved in this story? I said, I don't know, I was just making a recommendation. And so she just got on her knees and gave her life to Jesus. And I was always so curious about that. And I asked her, how come? I know I'm not supposed to say that. I'm supposed to go, yeah, of course it's gonna happen. I was like, why'd you do that? And she told me later, she didn't tell me right away. She goes, I was sitting in my car, grabbing my material, my notebook and my pens, and she goes, I started to shake. She goes, I hadn't met anyone. I had not met you, so I knew it wasn't about me. She said, I hadn't even walked into the church. I was just getting ready and I started shaking and I thought, what's going on? And she goes, and this is strange because I am an atheist, but in the moment, I knew I was entering into the presence of God. See, I love the fact that as individuals, we can be explained, but together we're an unstoppable force because love becomes thick and real and powerful. And just one last thought in verses 20 and 21. It says, now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we can ask or imagine according to his power that is at work within us. To him be the glory, or here it is, in the church and in Christ Jesus throughout all generations, forever and ever. Amen. I like how he wants to make sure that God's in the future. So he wants you to know that there's a future for the church because the future of the church is not only the place where together we express God's wisdom and together we experience God's fullness, but I want you to see this one. This is so beautiful that together we unleash God's creativity. See, I think so many of us, have you ever listened to this promise? Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask or imagine, according to his power that has worked within us, and you try to apply it with the me. But I want you to hear it again. See, it does not say this. Now to him who is able to do immeasurably more than all I ask or imagine, according to his power that is at work within me. That's the way we try to live it. See, I want you to know probably the primary reason you're not experiencing the immeasurable generosity of God, the extraordinary imagination of God. If you're sitting here going, why isn't God working in my life the way he's working in other people's lives? Why isn't God just sort of like pouring himself out in all of his generosity and all of his creativity? It's because you've been translating it with a me rather than a we. See, listen again. Now to him, God, who is able to do immeasurably more than all we ask. There has to be a we ask, or all we imagine. See, we live in a city of dreamers, but everybody has their own dream. And in fact, we trample on other people's dreams just to help our dream come true. We see our dream as our validation for demeaning everyone else's dream. And sometimes we get so frustrated because we think everyone else is responsible to make our dreams come true. But what if our greatest dreams, the greatest venture into imagination and creativity and beauty, were never supposed to be about my ask or my dream, but it's supposed to be about our ask and our dream, according to his power that is at work within us. See, I'm convinced that God is immeasurably creative, that God is so creative that it would blow our minds if he just had a little conversation with us. Man, I wish, if I ever had that question, if you could meet anyone in human history, who would you meet other than Jesus? Because if you believe in Jesus, you have to throw down Jesus. You go, Jesus. Who's your second? Jesus. Third, Jesus, because I believe in Jesus, so Jesus is all five. See, I never put Jesus on my list because I've met Jesus. So I don't need to put him on my list of people that I'd like to meet. And they usually want you to pick dead people, and Jesus isn't dead, so he doesn't qualify. So I always pick Da Vinci, because I want to have lunch with Leonardo da Vinci. Just his name is awesome. I'm so mad they named me Erwin. I could have been Leonardo de Cardona. God, that's my Spanish name. Not Leonardo, just Cardona. I could have been Leonardo de McManus, but it doesn't sound as eloquent. I just would love, Leonardo, where'd you get the idea? For the submarine? For the helicopter? Can I just sort of sit in and watch you paint the Mona Lisa? Is it you? Is it you? Is it you? Wouldn't that be incredible? I just love to have a hang with Leo. You know, be buds and just kind of let me into your process. I think it would blow my mind. I mean, imagine if you could just have just some time with Picasso. Go ahead. I just want to hang in your basement with you. Just while you're sketching out your future ideas. Is that really a face? How do you see that as a face? Why does she have two ears? And on the same side of her head, what are you thinking? What do you see? Or just to hang out with Einstein. It'd be great to hang out with Einstein because I would have the best hair. Well, I guess not really. Wouldn't it be amazing just to sit around and talk to Einstein, not about math because you wouldn't understand, just to talk about imagination. Just to talk about how to remain childlike and curious and open to possibilities. How did you perceive E equals MC squared? I would just love to have that conversation. It would blow my mind. See, I try to have conversations, by the way, with these people. I know it sounds a little insane, but I actually, in my imagination, spend time with these people I've just named. I try to have interactions with them and understand them and try to imagine what they would say if they were alive in this moment and seeing the world the way it is. But you can't do that. But you can't have conversations with the most brilliant man who ever lived, with the most creative person who ever walked this earth. You can have a conversation with someone who makes Da Vinci pale in comparison, who makes Picasso look like an amateur, who makes Einstein appear as if he's simply a novice. See, God wants to have a conversation with you. But the conversations of God are so big that no one mind can contain what God is imagining for all of us. God is dreaming about you But whenever he dreams about you, it's always in the context of us. Because he wants us to learn how to walk together, how to believe in each other, how to love each other, how to pick each other up. You see, it's more important for God that you learn how to forgive than how to make money. It is more important for God that you learn how to give hope than it is to buy another car. See, it's more important to God that we learn how to be human again, how to connect to each other. And the only way God can do that, because see, one butterfly, it just doesn't make the impact. One firefly, it just doesn't make the impact. One human who's been changed by God, it's a beautiful thing, but it's hard to translate. It's like dotting an I, but you never put the I. You never write the word, you just dot the I. See, when you try to do this alone, when you decide it's just you and God, you're just dotting an I, but you're not writing the sentence. You're putting the period at the end of the sentence, but no one knows what the statement is. No one knows what the declaration is. You're putting the question mark there, but no one knows what the question is. When you live your life alone, you disconnect to the story. From the story God is writing and telling so that all humanity can know there's hope for you. So I'm overwhelmed by the creativity we've experienced together, by the beauty that we've stepped into. Had there been moments I've just stood back and thought, I could have never imagined this. Because when we're in community together, we become something more than the total of the parts. So yeah, maybe I'm outdated. See, I don't think I'm actually antiquated. I don't think I'm living in the past. I think I'm actually living in the future. See, I think that a part of the confusion is that the people who don't believe in the church, they're living in the past. All they know is the history of the church. They don't seem to be aware of the future of the church. But I'm telling you, the future of the church is beautiful. The future of the church is creative. Can you feel it? I'm telling you, I see just pieces of it because I can only get a piece of it. But I see it. I see the church as the epicenter of human creativity. I see the church as the epicenter of beauty and wonder. I see the church as known around the world by compassion and love. I see the church as a place where everyone knows that they matter. See, a part of the problem is when the church is known for judgment and condemnation. And the church is known as a community of people who are arrogant and judgmental and self-righteous. They're not demonstrating the wisdom of God. They're making a fool of God. Because how can we be that when 2,000 years ago, Jesus stepped into human history, when God took on flesh and blood, when God walked among us, and when he allowed himself to be crucified on a cross, when he was buried and then he rose from the dead? How in the world could we ever be the people known for judgment and condemnation when God died on a cross so that we would know forgiveness and freedom? It's time that the church stops lying about God. Start telling the truth. God loves the people that we didn't want him to love. He accepts people that we don't want to accept. Here's the problem. You see, God is for every human being. But religion is such a great mechanism from which we can exclude those that we do not love. That we can cut out the people we don't want. And we've tainted Jesus' reputation. I think the future of the church is that finally, maybe just finally, we're gonna look like Jesus. We're gonna be beautiful, compassionate, creative. We're gonna be curious and filled with wonder. We're gonna be like an ocean of butterflies, bringing color and elegance and beauty to the world all around us. We're gonna be an endless universe of fireflies, flying over those who are lost and alone. Not simply lighting the way to hope, but bringing beauty and astonishment to everyone along the way. You know what I want us to be? I want us to be unexplainable. I want us to be so beautiful that people are compelled. I want us to move in such wonder as humans that we become an expression of humanity that everyone in the world wants to step into. See, I want people to ask us, how did you become so compassionate? How did you become so generous? How did you learn how to forgive? How in the world did you learn how to trust, how to have so much hope? How did you learn to find the resilience to overcome every failure? How did you know that tomorrow would be better than today? And see, what I want us to say is not, I'm awesome. See, what I want you to say is, oh, you don't understand. I didn't do it alone. Every time I fell, there were people who just picked me up and said, we'll walk for you until you can walk again. And if you're here and you don't yet believe in Jesus, and you're not sure about God, I just want you to know, you don't have to agree with us to be with us. You do not have to believe to belong. You don't have to cross this line of faith so that we will love you and be for you. Because, see, our unfortunate position is we just love you the way you are. And we just want you to know life and know that you matter and know there's a God who sees you, who thinks that you have infinite value. And when everyone else maybe overlooked you, he never took his eyes off of you. He always thought you were astonishing. He always knew that you were the future of the church. Because when one person finds grace, when one person finds forgiveness, when one person finds healing, when one person finds hope, it changes everything.
Thank you, Pastor Erwin, for that incredible talk, for putting your heart and soul into that. And I know my mind is blown. It's going to take a week to even process that. And we just want to take a moment. If you today decided to give your lives to Jesus, we cannot wait to journey alongside you. Pull out your phones and text DECIDED to 71711, and someone from our team will reach out to you. And make sure that you don't do this alone, because this is going to be the biggest step into your amazing journey with Jesus.
And we hope you had an incredible day today.
Yeah.
Now, we are so excited to continue this series alongside with you. Have an incredible rest of your week, and we will see you next weekend. We love you, Mosaic.
There is a fountain wrapped in a haze of light, flooded with goodness, rushing with words of life, and they yield to the bone. They're sweet to my soul, and I'm swept away. Come on, we sing, I am